In 2014, 79 nations undertake an experiment in an effort to cool down the planet by releasing a cooling chemical called CW7 into the atmosphere, as advised by experts, as the issue of global warming continued to worsen. Nevertheless, the experiment was much too effective, and as a result, an ice age covered the whole planet. Except for the people on this train, every person on Earth froze to death. The affluent passengers and the freeloaders who boarded the train without a ticket make up the two groups of the remaining survivors of Earth that are being transported by this 17-year-old train. The train's rich passengers live in the front half, while the freeloaders are crammed into the back half. Dr. Wilford, who lives in the front compartment, is the creator of this train. The reason the train has continued operating for 17 years is because he built an everlasting engine for it. This train's tracks also span the whole planet, allowing it to make a full round in only a single year. Everything required to support life is present aboard the train, including mechanisms that replicate Earth's environment, which enable food to be produced and delivered within the vehicle. Individuals may even give birth there. In the meanwhile, the guards count the passengers in the tail section as they do every day. This is a 17-year-old routine that continues to this day, and the passengers are then handed a protein bar in the guise of meals. A guard asks whether anybody is a violinist since the affluent travelers need something to do. A senior couple who were members of an orchestra come forward. The elderly guy, however, would not go anywhere without his wife, so the guards beat her before dragging him along since they only need one person. The passengers in the rear portion are severely oppressed by the guards, but they are unable to fight back since they are armed. Later, we observe Edgar and Curtis, two closest friends, going through everyone's protein bars on the train. Tanya, a fellow traveler, informs them that her son's protein bar has what they are searching for. Upon inspecting his protein bar, they discover a message inside that is typical of what someone from the front vehicle sends them. They deliver the message, which comprises the letters Nam, to Gilliam, an elderly man who, despite having only one arm and leg, is regarded by everybody as their leader. Gilliam tells Curtis that Nam is the name of the guy who created the train's whole security system and who is incarcerated in the jail part of the train at the moment. They can access the engine and open all the doors if they can get in touch with him. The door of the prison vehicle only opens for 4 seconds, so they're not sure how they're going to get inside. After some time, Wilford's aide, Claude, gives the guards instructions to return to their vehicle and remove all of the youngsters from the passengers. Claude uses a measuring tape to get the heights of all the kids before beginning to take Tanya's son Tim and Andrew's son Andy with her. When Andrew notices this, he starts to struggle with the guards and hits Claude with his shoe. The guards grab Andrew as payback, and at Mason's order, they yank one of his arms out of the train and into the bitter cold. Mason's job aboard the train was to keep everything under control. She says that all shoes belong in the tail area and shouldn't strive for a light status, just as much as shoes belong on the foot. She clutches Andrew's shoe. She tells them that if they hadn't been let to live on the train, they would have frozen just as their ancestors did 17 years ago. Then, using a hammer, the guards smash Andrew's arm like ice and carry it back inside the frozen train. The passengers are furious and seethe with hatred at the savagery, but the weapons stop them in their tracks. Several older passengers bravely go forward to assist Andrew, but they are greeted with fear when the guards raise their firearms. Mason orders the guards to lay down their pointless weapons, stoking whispers aboard the train that the guards had run out of ammo after a 2-year-ago uprising. When the guards return the following day to do another head count, Curtis makes the decision to take a chance. He lunges forward, slamming the guard's pistol down on his own head, but the weapon catches fire. When the unfortunate passengers discover that the guards' weapons are really empty, they all revolt. They overwhelm the guards and smash down every door leading to the train's prison area. Since Nam was a known drug addict, they try to wake him up by sliding him out of his sleeping cell, but he doesn't wake up. They use a substance called chronol to achieve this. Nam refuses to accept Curtis and Edgar's offer of a chronol bribe in exchange for opening each door, citing his daughter Yona's addiction to drugs as justification. Yona, nevertheless, has a magical talent that lets her see past any door. For the first time in 17 years, they are able to glimpse sunshine as Nam unlocks the door of the fallen automobile, which also has a window. But when Gilliam looks outside, he is let down since the earth is still blanketed in snow, even after 17 years have passed. Curtis climbs up to have a look while the gang makes their way to the next vehicle, which houses the food production room. There he learns that the protein bars they had been consuming for the last 17 years are really made of cockroaches. Enraged, he approaches the chef, only to discover that he is wearing the identical message pill that they used to break into the protein bars. According to the chef, his responsibility is to hide it inside the protein bar. He says he gets it from the front vehicles. When Curtis opens the note, water is scrawled on it. According to Gilliam, the message tells them to go to the water area where all of the passengers get clean water. He claims that they would be able to bargain with the wealthy passengers if they can turn off the water supply. Yona, however, uses her abilities at that precise time to spot a swarm of guards in the neighboring cabin. Abruptly, the door opens, revealing an army of soldiers with melee weapons in front of them. The two factions engage in lethal combat and begin murdering one another. The leader declares in the middle of the confusion that they are about to cross the Yekaterina Bridge, signifying the end of their year-long voyage. Before picking up the combat anew, both parties take a little break to welcome the new year. Mason shows him when the fight is still going strong and gives the guards the order to kill 74% of the freeloaders. The guards prepare their night vision goggles and take advantage of the darkness as the freeloaders understand that the train is going to pass through a tunnel. They attack the gullible passengers viciously, and Mason watches the mayhem via her goggles. But when a few people from the rear section show up with lighted torches, the whole situation is turned around, giving the hapless passengers a chance to fight back. Edgar throws a knife at Mason, cutting one of his legs, but a strong guard captures Edgar from behind. Curtis must decide whether to sacrifice his buddy Edgar in order to capture Mason after being split between the two. Mason follows his orders to disable every guard, and when she does so dutifully, Yona unintentionally kills Edgar's assassin. Mason later confesses that Wilford has the two children because of his love of children while being questioned by the tail passengers about them. Mason is given a warning by Curtis to phone Wilford or else the train's water supply would be shut off. Mason explains that the water enters from behind. If they cut off the link, they will be the ones who will suffer instead of the privileged passengers, since the train's nose breaks up the snow and transforms it into water. Mason discloses that Wilford will never visit them, regardless of what they do. Mason is of no use to them, so Curtis makes the decision to get rid of her. Mason, however, vows to ensure their safety as they go to the engine, where they may swap her life for Wilford's disposal. This strategy convinces Curtis, who chooses to give her a try. The other travelers decide to remain behind to hold the guards captive, while Curtis, Andrew, Tanya, Nam, Yona, and a fighter by the name of Gray decide to go with Mason the next day. A painter gives Mason the same treatment she gave them before, sketching the group while putting Andrew's sneaker on her head. Since here is the location where the food for the privileged passengers is produced, the party comes across a variety of flora and plants as they make their way to the next vehicle. As they go to the next area, they are astounded to see an aquarium full with fish. Mason says that they only eat sushi twice a year to preserve ecological balance as he serves them sushi that the kitchen has cooked. Mason, however, is ready to devour her sushi like everyone else when Curtis interrupts and hands her a protein bar to consume in its place. Once they've gone through the butcher vehicle, the gang enters the school area where kids are yelling. Tanya and Andrew exhibit their drawings to the parents as soon as possible in an attempt to find their children. But one student gets up and says that the guards took them through the front doors. All day long, all these kids are told is how amazing their rescuer Wilford is. The children sing a song honoring Wilford's grandeur with great pleasure, which is even dedicated to him. These children have been brainwashed since they were little to think that the people in the tail part are dirty, slothful dogs that take months off from bathing. The instructor draws their attention to the corpses of the 7 frozen people outside the window as the train passes by a certain location in the scenery. 15 years ago, these individuals leaped off the train in the hopes of surviving on the outside. At that moment, a bald guy shows up with baskets full of eggs, which he gives to everyone in celebration of the new year. The throng is shocked to see the eggs when he gets to the tail area, since they thought chickens had long since gone extinct. Before abruptly removing an automatic rifle concealed under the eggs and murdering all the innocent passengers, the Eggman discloses that there are really many creatures on board that were thought to be extinct. This allows the guards to be released from their imprisonment. In addition, the instructor removes a rifle from the egg basket and fires at the group, killing Andrew before Gray uses a knife to knock her down. Mason reaches for a pistol, but before she can fire them, Curtis knocks it out of her grasp. Using the security camera, they see Franco, Mason's goon, murder Gilliam in front of the camera. This infuriates Curtis, who then shoots Mason. Now that he is the only leader of the tail portion, Curtis leads the group through the next vehicles, each of which has massage treatment and physicians for affluent passengers. But Franco, the head of the guards, follows them around like crazy and eventually finds them in the sauna. After shooting Tanya with his rifle, he fights Curtis viciously until he is knocked unconscious. Gray steps in just in time to stop him from killing Curtis, but even Gray is helpless against Franco, and he murders him with great cruelty. Then, as Franco looks around the sauna rooms, he discovers Nam concealed behind a large lady. They struggle viciously, but Nam ends up stabbing Franco to death this time. While dying, Tanya shows Curtis a drawing of her son Tim and begs him to help her locate him before she passes away. Now, only Curtis, Nam, and Mona are alive from the previous 6. They continue past a number of vehicles that are home to lively parties until they eventually arrive at the last segment, before to the engine. When Nam requests for some chronomal before Curtis gives the order to unlock the door to the final area where Wilford lives, Curtis becomes enraged and tosses all the chronomal out of his pocket before beating on the door. Nam gives him the last cigarette on Earth and advises him to calm down. As he tells his moving tale, Curtis takes a puff from his cigarette. Wilford's guards, who also stole all the passengers' luggage, forced thousands of destitute travelers into a tiny iron compartment in the tail section 17 years ago. There was total anarchy as they were crammed inside a stuffy iron vehicle with no food or drink. After a month, the hunger became so bad that people began eating the weak. This is when cannibalism became prevalent. With remorse, Curtis acknowledges that newborns had the finest taste. When a lady attempted to defend her infant, a rapacious guy with a knife murdered her and snatched the child. Just then, an elderly guy moved up, cut his arm, and offered the meat to the ravenous man rather than the infant. Curtis discloses that the guy holding the knife was none other than Gilliam, the elderly man was none other than Curtis, and the baby was none other than Edgar, his closest buddy who was still a baby. Motivated by Gilliam's selflessness, every passenger started donating their limbs to the influential individuals in order to save their offspring. They were forced to endure this behavior for a month until the guards delivered them protein bars, which they had been consuming for the last 18 years. Curtis says he wants to go up against Wilford and get vengeance for this abuse. On the other hand, Nam advises Curtis to open the outer door rather than Wilford's. He admits that he has been gathering chronomal, a very flammable industrial waste, not just to get high, but also to blow out the outside door. Nam uses the wreckage of an aircraft, which was partly hidden by snow the year before, but is now completely visible, to demonstrate why he believes the ice is melting at the New Year's bridge. This implies that with the aid of their jackets, they may live outside the train. Abruptly, Wilford's automobile door opens and Claude shoots Nam in the face before opening the door for Curtis. When Curtis eventually turns to face Wilford, he tells him that because he has never gone to the rear, he is the first person to have walked the whole length of the train. Curtis learns from Wilford that the medication he used to get the protein bars was provided by Wilford. He did it in an attempt to incite rebellion among the destitute passengers and maintain a sustainable population aboard the train. He surprises Curtis by admitting that Gilliam was his accomplice and that the two of them had plotted the whole uprising. They all agreed that once they got to the New Year's bridge, Gilliam would put an end to the revolt. However, when Gilliam didn't, he got what he deserved. When Curtis finds out that Gilliam has been working against them the whole time, he is heartbroken yet unable to stop it. Wilford, who is becoming older, offers Curtis the job of loco pilot after letting him spend some alone time in front of his everlasting engine. Yona bursts in and begs Curtis for a matchstick so they may blow the train door while Curtis seems ready to accept the offer. But when she feels something under the floor, she finds Tim, Tanya's kid, functioning as a machine component within the engine. Wilford says that they must manually start the engine since a portion of it ceased operating. Furious, Curtis assaults Wilford and then saves Tim, losing his arm in the process. A last encounter between Nan and Franco, who pursued them and is still alive, occurs in the meantime. Just as Yona lights the chronomal bomb with a matchstick, Nam kills him again. The train derails and falls into a chasm as a result of the explosion's tremendous force, which also sets off an avalanche. Only Yona and Tim seem to have survived this situation in the last scene. They see a polar bear in the distance as they exit the train for the first time ever, confirming that life does indeed exist outside of the train.